Okay, I'd like to call the April 30th Water and Utilities meeting to order. We really have one item on the agenda, and we're going to do a little discussion afterwards. The item on the agenda is a recommendation from Utility Rate Review, RCA number 13-080-4/8. And this is the utility rate review for recommendation for rate increases. And they looked at a 5-year outlook, and I guess I'll turn it over to Bruce if you want to comment on that, since you are the chairman of the, no?
I just have a big mouth.
Okay, well, how about the spokesman
Okay.
for utility rate review?
We looked at a couple issues. A couple of the business owners had asked about maybe providing a special rate for the high-end users. In discussions with them, we seriously considered it, but with some talk and discussion from members of council, that it wasn't a direction that the council was willing to go in. So we basically worked on our recommendations to not utilize any kind of special rate for the high-end users.
And the reason being that, I'll speak for myself, that we are still pretty competitive.
Yes.
As a small community our size compared to, I think the only other two entities might be the city of Akron and the city of Canton that subsidizes their rates, I believe. So I think overall, when we talked about before, we're still pretty competitive. And
Our highest user here in the city wouldn't even rate in the top 50 in the city of Akron. And Canton really subsidizes their city water service because they can sell so much of it to outlying communities.
Right.
So it's really not a fair comparison.
Right.
But when you compare our rates with those of other communities, we are definitely in the bottom third, or I should say, top third of low rates. So we're very competitive in that. We looked at the, Arcadis had brought a engineering plan for for the system and a review of projects and recommendations that needed to be done. In order to fund those recommended repairs and service issues over the next 5 years, utility rates had to increase. We also know that we have to look at the potential down the road that we'll have Avon charging more for the water, which will have to be adjusted as we go forward. But with these recommendations that we brought to the council, we feel very confident we can at least fund these needed repairs. I just want to say that the help that Nino and Pat gave was instrumental, and of course Keith bringing the facts and figures to the table really helped us solidify what we needed to do.
And the recommendation is a 3% increase starting in January of 2014, 2015, 3% in 15, 3% in 16, 3% in 17, and a 3% in 18. And you did touch on some of the Arcadis projects that Pat and Nino looked over, and the projects that are pulled out of, they didn't include all of them right now, but they included the priority projects. And
Correct.
The public needs to know that these are priority. They're not, we are needed to keep our, they are needed to keep our system strong, because we are supplying water, which is obviously an important asset to our community. So, I appreciate, did you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think we're very confident with going forward with these recommendations. We think this is a minimal amount that we need to do, and realizing that we still have a recovering economy, people are still struggling. We wanted to minimize any kind of increase, but we figured at 3%, it's something that can be absorbed in the family budget.
Dolly, did you have any comment?
No, I was just thinking, did we say it would be for 5 years, or did we say 3 years?
No, it's fine.
Okay. I knew we had an ending, it wasn't
Yeah.
continual.
Dennis?
just for the other two committee members, because I'm not sure that you were there when we had the utility rate review, but one thing we ask of them is to make a recommendation in line with our budget, as opposed to just 1 year at a time. We thought that made more sense. And the other thing is, we felt we had to have some number to start with, but then review it each year as we look at adding then the 6th year, the 7th year, review it each year, and if the need is greater, we have something we can adjust, or if the revenue or money needed is not as great, we could always reduce it back. But at least it gives us kind of a starting line to go from.
Well, and I've always been in favor of, since we started, well, since I've been on council talking about this, of having an increase every year instead of waiting 3 or 4 years and having one large increase. I just.
Right.
Well, in reference to the, and we, obviously, if you look at the water accounts, they run in the red. And, you know, and I took part in the utility rate review discussion, and one thing that I wanted to throw out there to see how the rest of the committee feels about it is, once we get past 2014, what do you, or even the administration, what do you think about us putting a range? Instead of 3%, or utility rate review can speak up to, a range of maybe 1 to 3%, knowing that we are gonna review every year, but we're not committing to the full 3%. We're given a range there. Lowest will be at least 1 up to 3, instead of just putting 3% flat for those years further out.
Well, what we did is we looked at the needs for meeting the Arcadis recommended repairs and service issues, and in order to meet those needs, we had to do it at 3% minimum.
Okay.
So 3% is pretty much going to be the required amount in order to perform the repairs that your committee had recommended to be taken.
And the reason I'm just a little cautious is that I know we got a firm yes from the administration that the projects that were set out per Pat's recommendation, not just Arcadis, but what Pat thought he could handle, we could get done in the certain years. And I'm just concerned that we might not meet that tier, and that we're still gonna be planning on collecting, and I just wanted to leave a buffer in there, if you will, that let's say we don't get a project done, or a couple projects, and money's starting to accumulate. Maybe, as you spoke about too, Mayor, about review, we'll catch it beforehand, but that's why I just didn't know.
I would be in favor of keeping it at 3%, and if for some reason we started to get, you know, overabundance of funds, which.
Right, and then we could freeze it then.
We could either freeze it or reduce it at that time.
I would submit that in addition to projects, although I think we have a pretty good idea what we can handle there, I think the biggest variables here are probably
Water costs.
usage, which can go either way. For 3 or 4 years, we were down in usage every year, and I started to project that into my estimates, and then 11 were kind of flat, and 12 was a big spike in usage. Right now, we don't really know if that's a one-time thing, has to do with the weather being dry, or if it's gonna continue. If that spike continues, now I will say for the first few months of 13, we're a little down from where we were in 12, but it's really not long enough to make any kind of projection off of that. So, if that usage really climbs a lot more than we expect over the next 3 or 4 years, that's gonna have a major positive effect on revenue, and by the time we get 3 or 4 years out, we will be back saying, okay, maybe we don't need 3, maybe we could drop this off to 2 in those years farther out. And the other one is usage going the other way would have the opposite effect. And then the other one is cost from Avon. I mean, we haven't projected a lot in here for increases from Avon. We're looking out 5 years. You can only go out accurately so far. You really don't know what they're gonna do beyond that point. And, those kind of things you gotta look in. I think the 3, it gives me something that I'll put into the revenue estimate. We'll build in that we're planning on doing 3. So we'll be able to show that we're planning on balancing this budget. We're planning on raising the revenues enough to keep up with where the expenditures are. And then as we move forward, if we see high use generating extra revenue, okay, well, we can back it down a little bit from the 3. Or if we see low use or more increases from Avon, we're gonna have to increase a little bit from the 3, but it gives us a baseline that should hit where we need to be. Because this will get us by 2018, we're projecting to be fairly close by 2018, year over year, to breaking even, which we haven't been since I've been here. I mean, we've been spending out of balances for ages.
Right.
And obviously, at some point, that has to stop. By 2018, we expect to be roughly balanced. Now, a lot can change between now and then, and we'll make adjustments as we see fit.
Any other questions from, I know there's some other factors involved, but I mean, this is just basic to keep us just above water, if you will, not to, no pun intended, but to keep us going. This is 3% just to provide the basic system and to make sure we have a quality system, but just basic repairs and construction. So I do appreciate Pat and Nino and the mayor and Utility Rate Review for all their efforts to bring something together for Utility Rate Review to make a recommendation on, but also their time and effort to bring something to us so we can then review it and then pass it on to finance and then eventually council will vote on it. But anybody else in the committee?
Yeah, I just want to echo what you said, as far as Nino and Pat and the mayor, providing the information. I know there's always been a question in the past, I shouldn't say it, some members of council always felt, well, is there really a need or not? And I think the close working relationship that you have with your department heads and the utility rate review gives us a much more solid numbers to go on, and I can speak for myself. I feel real comfortable, and I appreciate everybody's hard work as usual.
All right. Anything?
We know the 3% per year won't cover all the projects that need to be
Right.
done. But going back to talking about the surpluses, if we get 2-3 years out and we realize we are gonna have surplus, we can always add another project and get it done, right? Even if we had to sub it out to somebody else.
We've got a much longer list of projects.
Yeah.
Then we have
Just
funds,
kind of a
yeah.
priority. what we
I
thought
really
the
don't
whole
see that
program.
we're gonna need to reduce it anytime soon.
Well,
Chances are
that's
no.
a possibility. I mean, just like Keith explained, I mean, it could go either way, but,
And that can absorb, those capital projects can absorb some of that difference either way as well.
Right.
Extra money comes in, we can do more of those, and
Right.
not enough, we'll have to push a few of them out.
but we do have, is it an ordinance or something that stated that we're not allowed to hold a certain amount in our coffers for the water, is that correct, Keith? Isn't there some ruling out there
Isn't it
that we have to be
because it's
careful
enterprise
about?
fund?
What?
Because it's an enterprise fund, right?
Well,
You need Mr. Huber to chime in on that.
Yeah.
There are some, the language states that we can hold a percentage of expenditures plus an amount necessary to retire the debt outstanding. Well, the debt outstanding is enough that it's significantly above this balance.
right. Okay.
That would be a good problem to have is more money than we need.
Yeah.
Right.
Brian?
Just one last thing, we know we're fairly low compared to a lot of other communities. What about when we get out to 2018? Do we know where we stand? I mean, obviously, we know those communities will probably raise as well.
The EPA gives us a report every year. We give our rates to them, they get rates from around the state. They don't do it quite as in-depth as what we did, where it's by user size. They just have a bill for what they call a average residential customer. But it typically is up 4 or 5% every year. So I don't, if we're going up 3% a year, it's
So
not
we're
like
still
we're gonna
gonna
be
stay
running
at the
away from
lower
them.
end.
Yeah, they're going up at least that, so, we'll be in the same place or really probably better. If we go up 3% a year from 13 to 18, we'll be relatively better in 18 than we were in 13, more likely.
I think the people who are, or the communities that are part of the Cleveland water system are in trouble because
Right.
they've got so many expenditures that they're going to have to do over the next few years, that it should put us in an even better light. And then, once we retire the debt, we'll be,
Right.
you know, if we didn't have the debt on there, we'd be probably the lowest community. So, once that's retired, we'll look really good.
Any more comments from you, Mayor?
No, sir.
Any, Nino or Patrick, anything? Paul?
No, I'm good. I agree with everything that you said and the direction you're setting.
Okay, okay.
So I'll make a motion to accept the utility reviews rate recommendations and pass it on to finance.
Okay.
Second?
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, same sign. And this will go on to finance, and we'll have a nice discussion on that again, but I appreciate,
Don't get excited, we're not done yet.
yeah, no, it's not that quick. The next item was just discussion, and I just wanted to, I mean, there's a couple topics out there that are lingering that I would like to, touch briefly on, to see where we're at. The first one we'll talk about is the ETL, 1 and 2, and I don't know if Patrick, you want to, there was discussions again where we're getting questioned by Avon Lake to see if we would abandon our agreement with the ETL 2 and just go to ETL 1, is that correct? Or you want to just
Yeah,
give a brief
Where
explanation?
this came from, we've heard it before from, and in our past, I think it was February or March, we had our annual meeting with all the users, of which we're a part. And this was one of the agenda items, it was a long agenda, and this was one of the items that came up. And the idea, what it is, so you know, there's, ETL 1 was built, I think, in '88 or '89. We were
What
not-
is ETL 1?
It stands for Eastern Transmission Line, it's just how they designated it for Avon Lake. We're not part of it, it was built, Medina County was part of it, but not the city. Our agreement came along in the late '90s, was put into play in 2002, I think, and that's ETL 2, and that's our agreement. So, and both of these lines come down to Medina County, they both serve us, we benefit from both of them. But our agreement is specifically for ETL 2. ETL 2, in terms of accounting, is in really good shape. It's pretty much a brand new line, a lot of revenue, no problems. And by that, a portion of our bill, every gallon, we ship into a maintenance fund. Hasn't been much maintenance, so the maintenance fund's sitting pretty.
What's-
ETL 1.
You know what
is
it's
low.
at right now, by chance,
I
ballpark?
know, they gave it to us. Yeah, like he said, close to $1 million, I think.
Okay.
Maybe it's a lot.
Yeah. ETL 1.
Is that a ballpark?
Yeah, that's a very ballpark.
ETL 1 does not have, it's not bad shape, but it's got some more needs. It's an older line.
Sure.
And they had some issues, you might remember when Avon, or, City of Avon put in the exit ramps on 90 recently, they had a new interchange. We were required, or they were required, we're not part of it, to lower the water line, ETL 1, cost a lot of money they didn't expect. There's some maintenance concerns about a few things. So anyhow, it's not in great shape. And then from their operational mindset, like I said, they operate, they don't, it's not like they have two different computers and one controls ETL 1 and one's ETL 2. It's one system. And we get water here in the city through both pipes. It just makes sense that way. It's the smart way to operate. Our agreement is just ETL 2.
So that's how they chose to supply our waters to come from both. That's not
Yeah, that's how
what
any
we
reasonable
right.
operator would do it.
Right.
It would be silly not to.
Sure.
It creates redundancy too.
Correct, yeah, we benefit from redundancy. And the biggest thing is accounting wise, leaving aside the balances, it's kind of a hassle to separate, because Medina County is part of 2. So anyhow, they broached the idea to us, what if we just combine them and it's just ETL, and we don't have this 1 and 2. Of course, our concern, we're suddenly going from our responsibility is for a pretty much brand new pipe, and we have a nice balance to assuming all this debt, maybe a lot of repair and maintenance costs. And their question to us was, well, is there any, can can you discuss it and see if there's any dollar figure, or credit or something? You know, we feel Medina's due, if you come here, we'll give you 10% off water for the next 2 years, or something like that. We said we didn't know, we would come talk it up. Talk to Mr. Coyne and the mayor, I know that we're interested in
Right.
Yeah.
now, they've never formally, there's no formal proposal, there's nothing we need to respond to,
Mhm.
it's just kind of a discussion.
Right, and that's all this is.
Yeah.
And so really, the only thing that would really benefit the city to abandon two and just be on one is that 10% you spoke about.
Well, I'm throwing stuff out there.
Right,
They
right.
said, is there a number out there where you would feel comfortable, we could throw the agreement out, but modify the agreement so it reflects, a combined ETL.
Okay.
But understand the converse of ETL two is ETL one, which is having ongoing maintenance
Sure,
issues.
sure.
And a depleted maintenance fund, that now they're looking at our pot of money saying, hey, if we.
Would be nice to tap into that.
Right, sure.
So that's really what the,
But where they threw out this thing about a number is, because we pointed that out, I mean, we said, we've got this big pot of money, and if we combine, we're not getting anything out of it, and they said, well, there's gotta be a number, one guy said, there has to be a number at which you're made whole, what's the number? That was kind of the question.
Uh-huh.
Okay, if we combine, everybody should come in on even terms, and I looked at it as, this is a 10-year-old, or this line is 10 years older, Patrick can give me a lifespan for that, we can just divide it out and depreciate it and say, okay, that line's worth, it's not worth as much because it's got more use and it's got less life left, and we have this extra cash, so in order for us to join and make one system, we ought to be getting a check for $600,000, whatever that number is.
And that might just be a short-term.
Or a discount or a check or.
Short-term discount or something that,
Right.
in the long haul, might not even
I'd
be
say
the
wait
right
another-
number.
Wait another 15 years and we'll
Right.
have different with that maintenance fund.
Yeah.
And then start saying, okay, now what do you want to offer us?
I
Yeah.
think the first step, they said, if there was a number that we could agree on, would you be interested, if we could come up with it? I don't even know if we're interested.
Okay,
I guess that's what we need to discuss.
yeah.
I'm looking back at that original email that Keith sent out after your meeting. And if I'm reading this right, it looks like that fund had 870,000 in it, but 450 of it is owed to the fund by ETL one.
Yeah, there was a loan because they ran out of money.
So they're pulling from two's
I think that was
maintenance
that
to pay
special
for one.
project, but it was $700,000 to lower that line,
Mm-hmm,
and that's something out of left field, no one would expect that.
right,
That's,
okay. Yeah, I mean, me personally, I mean, we're not voting on it or anything tonight, but, I'm not excited about it either. It's in our contract that we're committed to two, and unless there's some ballpark number out there that's so impressive that's still gonna secure us for decades, I don't see why we would do something like that. But, I mean, if you guys have any more updates, obviously please share with us where we're going on that, and if Keith, you calculate out a magic number that, might, I don't even know, it's probably a waste of time, because I don't hear anybody up here real excited about it, Brian, and I know other council members. Paul, I don't know how you feel about it, but,
I'm on board, it doesn't make any sense.
right, okay.
And Mr. Coyne, not to speak for him, but in the discussions I've had with him, he's saying, and that's the whole point of the contract. In this particular case, we have the reserve, we have less maintenance, we're protected by our contract, and they want to undo all that and get us into this mix. And he's just he and I both are apprehensive because the risk and liability is so unknown that in our case, there would be no reason really for us to.
Right.
I think the rest of the council's on board with that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next item, and we talked about it too, I think, in the utility rate review, about our water capacity and selling additional water. I know we're at a certain limit, but what are we using, 55% of what we have available to us? I mean, I don't know if there's any additional.
on a daily basis, it's less than that. If I remember right, through that contract we just spoke of, we own the rights to 10.3 million gallon a day or 10.6, something like that. Our average daily use last year was like 3.1, 3.2, and that's the most in our history.
Okay.
Now, average daily use, I think the highest day we ever had is about 5.2 million. So,
Well, besides to go ahead,
maximum, I'm sorry, the maximum daily use.
was what?
Or 5.2 was the highest day we've ever had.
And what did you say our allowable daily?
10.6.
10.3 or 10.6?
So besides to a flourishing industrial area that has new additions to it and some other projects that might need additional water capacity, what's our next option? I mean, we can't, is there anything outside our borders that we're allowed to extend out to serve anybody, or is it even worth it out there to put the money in to extend lines out to sell additional water? Is that even an
Well,
option?
there's some options, like Ranger Road, for instance, east of the water plant. We service, I don't know, 8 or 10 homes on Ranger Road, west of the plant. East of there, they don't have water, so there's potential. I don't know how many
Yeah,
want water, if any.
What's that?
I don't know how many want it, if any.
Right, oh, yeah, but when I hear that, I don't hear a lot of usage. I
No.
mean,
The biggest
something
thing-
that's gonna justify.
The biggest thing we've talked about is like the CETA area. If that ever
Right.
really develops, we need to be able to serve it. Now, that's an if.
Right,
Who knows?
right, so basically, realistically, we're looking at in the expansion of our industrial, our CETA, and that's pretty much it.
In a water complex.
In a water complex. Okay, Pat, status of our 2013 projects. How is everything looking for this year? I mean, are
Okay,
we,
I think we'll have 2 different submittals for council for this coming meeting. The Fair Road and the interior coating of South Court.
okay,
Both ready to move forward, bidding on both of those.
okay, and West Smith is later in the year, correct?
The water line?
Yeah, you have phase 2 here on your, looking at 2013 capital improvement list you provided.
The West Smith project starts Monday.
Right,
That's phase 1.
Correct.
well, on here you have phase 2.
Now, it's
Okay.
confusing. We're technically doing phase 2 before phase 1.
Okay.
Because phase 1 got dragged down by ODOT.
Do you see anything on this list that's not gonna get done this year? Okay. 'Cause we'll continue to ask, because, obviously that's a concern, so I just wanted to bring it up. But the tank's going in, what did you say, it's gonna go out for bid?
Correct, yeah.
Okay,
We're gonna submit here for the next council meeting.
Okay.
Request.
all right.
If they ask about sales, I guess, it came up at that meeting, if we jump back to that capacity issue for just a
Mhm.
minute. It came up at that meeting that they may be selling water to Westlake soon. Westlake's in court with Cleveland over whether or not they can get away from Cleveland's water.
Okay,
And then rural Lorraine expressed that they might have an interest in purchasing some additional capacity. And the county, in theory at least, as they, think they've got plenty now, but if the building gets back to where it was a few years ago and their use starts going up, how much would we be interested in selling?
well, and that's a key point. I guess we're gonna have to forecast on the usage for our community and out another 10, 20 years. All depends what comes up in those areas we spoke about.
Yeah. Well, the CETA, that's an unknown. The new water park, that's an unknown. But we do have, we can actually estimate if the industrial area was at capacity. We've had it at capacity before. Could be different companies going in their different water usages, but I think we can come up with, if everybody was at capacity, and the same with residential. How many, the list you sent us, Keith, of the houses under foreclosure, there's quite a few. So, if everybody was at capacity, we would know exactly, or at least estimate, not exactly,
Right.
but estimate what our maximum usage would.
I just want to clarify, Denny, you spoke twice about water park. Now, do you mean city pool?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I was just
So
gonna
when
look
I
at-
hear water park, I'm.
Well, I was gonna look
thinking-
at this Beechwood thing.
Yeah,
Something with water in it.
yeah, okay, I just want to clarify that, I just didn't want the public thinking that there's a big one going in on the west side of town, but,
Pythians.
anyhow. Another item, fire hydrants, how we, I don't know if Pat or Nino, you can speak to it, percentage of our fire hydrants right now that are not working, do we,
I'm just talking to Bill, if I may, Chief, I was the chief, it was 40, Chief Painter had ISO up, and that's where they monitor, and they have their meeting, and Bill McGarty was there with Corey, and all our hydrants that were that were taken out of service have been corrected, and I didn't see the report, they're meeting now with
Oh.
respect to the ICO detail,
okay,
which is when the state comes up and evaluates and assesses the scenarios.
so, could be 100% are working, or
That's
pretty
what my
darn close
understanding. Everything
to?
that was taken out of commission prior
Right,
has been repaired.
okay. Any other items similar to emergency needs that you guys see coming up here that might not be, any surprises coming up here that might not be on Pat's list that we need to think about, or?
I guess we'll find out in addressing that with respect to the water lines when they replace at the square. And we had
Oh,
one issue
right.
down here in front of Grand Market where we went 8 valves out within the system just to shut off one. So as we expand the project, we'll let it
Okay. Okay.
And when's that project start again? Or the bids for the square?
The square area, that should be within the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Good,
We'll be to you for bidding.
very good.
And the road repair starts when?
I don't know, they're to bid it, I think in July. I really have no idea when they'll be around here.
But we'll have our project done and
Plan.
ready to go. Okay.
And kind of off the subject, the intersection at Reagan and Foot, or Weymouth and Reagan, I see they've got some equipment sitting out there for the last 4 or 5 weeks, but where I know we're at ODOT's mercy there.
Yeah.
you
That's
heard
it's been
anything?
awarded, I actually thought they'd have more done by now. They've got I think it's a July completion date.
Yeah.
So you should start to see some real activity here in the next week or two.
Okay.
Thank you.
I know the first step, they had to put some temporary pavement in, so they were waiting till the asphalt plant's open. Well, they've been open for a couple weeks, I'm not sure what.
To me, like they were moving some storm sewers and things like
But
that.
they did quite a bit of storm sewer work, but then they kind of stepped aside.
Okay. That's all I have. I was gonna talk about the old plant, but, I mean, I know we had a lengthy discussion not too long ago about what we're gonna do with that, but, I mean, that's something I think we should make a call on or consider this year if the administration or council wants to look at other ideas for maybe decommissioning that plant fully and seeing what we want to do with it and see if there's something else we can do for our water department to move them into town to be a little more efficient and closer. But I know, like I said, we talked about before, it's on the list, so I'll bring it up, but we talked about building a new structure to house the equipment for the water department, and that came up on how long are we gonna stay out there, so I just wanna keep that fresh on everybody, and maybe we'll talk about it more in the future here, once we figure out maybe what's going on with the courts and other items like that, where there might be, or even out by the city garage, or with working something out with the county, maybe there'll be a facilities to look at in the future, but that's all I had. Is there anything else from members of the committee? Anything from the administration that maybe we missed or you wanted to talk about? Paul, you have anything?
Oh, good, thank you.
Anything from the residents? Okay. Thank you all for coming tonight. Kathy, you? No?
Hey, Kathy, let's talk.
Thank you, everybody, for your efforts. We appreciate it. This meeting's adjourned.